Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sigma Wolph Podcast for episode 21. 21, the age of alcohol consumption and I think cigarettes now. Do you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes? I don't know. I quit those. You got to be 21 to do a few things in this country, which is kind of weird. I remember I had a debate back in high school about this because they just changed the age to 21 to drink. And we had debate subjects, and I was, whatever the negative side is or whatever, against it, because I said, well, if you can go to war for your country, if you can be drafted in the selective service and go to war and die, you sure as hell should be able to have a drink. If you can get married at 18, but you can't have a glass of champagne, should you really be getting married at 18? Let's just make everything 21. I mean, shit, it's weird. Now, I don't know what the statistical outcome of all that was. Did alcoholism rates and teen deaths from alcohol-related accidents? I'm not sure. There was a lot of reasons. We should go back and revisit, but I wonder how it all shook out. Was it worth the inconvenience to everybody that turns 18? Now, when I was a kid, the 18-year-olds were drinking. Holy shit. I think they were drinking pretty heavily before 18. Yeah, it's kind of just wild, like 21. We'll make it 21 to join the military then. If you're not old enough to drink, don't send me my kid to get his head blown off either. Sometimes the law, you just got to the law is what it is, but sometimes the law is stupid and we should break the law when it's stupid. Just don't get caught breaking it, but live your life, man. Life is short. They've got a law for everything. Look at the number of laws on the books. Holy crap. I mean, imagine like primitive man. Primitive man comes out of the cave, and he's got a little village with his family and maybe a couple of neighbors. And all of a sudden, somebody made a rule. You can't throw a rock at Grok's wife's head if she doesn't give you the rest of the rat carcass to chew on. Whatever they would be upset about. Somebody had to make a rule eventually. Hey, don't throw a rock at this guy's wife. Get your own goddamn rat carcass. And don't come over and steal our rat carcasses anymore. And that would be necessary. But look at how many laws we got now. Jesus Christ, we're policing ourselves into oblivion. The stack is vast. And in America, I mean, we're supposed to have these constitutional rights, but living up here in upstate New York, we get so hamstrung by the New York City crowd that we just kind of get lumped in with a lot of the draconian laws and things that you'd expect in a place like California. New York City's so liberal. But then it bleeds up into this very red upstate New York region where the population is far fewer, so they have less pull. But it's a purple state, to be sure. And they have a lot of weird gun laws that seem really unconstitutional up here. And I know people on the left have gotten accustomed to accepting gun restrictions that people on the right are uncomfortable with. A lot of people ran out and bought guns during COVID on the left and were surprised that, yeah, you actually have to get an FBI background check every time you buy a gun. Like, these loopholes they talked about are nonsense. You used to be able to show up to somebody's house and sell them a rifle. I guess that's what they mean by the gun show loopholes, that people can sit out in the parking lot and make illegal trades. I'm not really sure what all that was about. But getting back to it, like the laws are crazy that we have to abide by. It's like everything you do could be considered breaking the law. It's not hard to find a crime. I think I don't remember who said it, but somebody said, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. Like they can figure out how to get you any way they want. And at the same time, people can use the laws of this country to their advantage. People with nefarious intentions and people with schemes that they know how to use the law to their advantage. In this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. And you can be guilty as a motherfucker, but if they can't prove it, oh well, you're O.J. Simpson, home signing footballs and waiting to go end up in prison anyway. What a dumb shit. I ended up in prison anyway. Took a gun to people who ripped them off for memorabilia in Vegas or something and ended up doing like 15 years. Definitely a guilty murderer, a psychopathic murderer. But we can just blame it on CTE. The laws are really messed up, and something that doesn't get talked about a lot is traffic law. One way they've really gotten around the Constitution in America is traffic law. They'll stop you for any reason they want now. They'll find a reason to pull you over. And then they're trained to talk you out of your rights. They'll do you dirty out there. And if you know your rights, you're probably going to end up getting a harder time from the officer. They don't like people that know their rights. Really annoys them. They're used to having compliance, and their egos get very inflated, a lot of them. I'm not saying every cop's like that. I've known some good cops, and there's certainly a good number of tyrannical cops. I've always said anybody can become a tyrant if you give them some power. And when you're used to people having to do what you say and respecting your uniform, you start getting accustomed to the feeling of walking in a room and everybody kind of clams up and does what you say and moves out of your way. And when that rare American citizen remembers that they don't have to do that and they stand up for their rights, or they don't put up with the tyranny, well, it doesn't go very well for those people a lot of times. But traffic law, it has allowed them to basically figure out ways around the Constitution to throw your ass in prison. A lot of people end up in prison from driving down the road doing the wrong thing or having the wrong thing. And that's how they get you. Just seems like a bad idea to throw the Constitution away and train our police forces to basically screw people out of money with a stack of traffic laws that they figured out how to get money out of before. And it's all arbitrary. I mean, I got caught holding my cell phone a couple of years ago for 2 seconds. Some state trooper, some young kid pulled me over, gave me a ticket, and it ended up getting reduced to parking within so many feet of a fire hydrant. It's like, it's all just bullshit. They just wanted money. I had to pay for some course, and they got $400 out of me, whatever it was. And that's how the world goes around, ladies and gentlemen. They will get some money out of you one way or another. It's very hard to avoid getting those flashing lights in your rear view once in a while. They come for us all, don't they? And you get taxed. You get taxed by the highwaymen. Sometimes you just have to do what you want to do, even if there's a law against it. I love watching these sovereign citizen guys get pulled over and they have no license plate. They got no registration or insurance. They'll make up their own paperwork, and they'll even make up their own license plates and shit. They have it all worked out. Now, I've seen these guys in action. I mean, they get into the courtroom and they can totally decimate the court because a lot of these people, these sovereign citizens, are so well versed in the law. They've spent their whole adult lives figuring out how to circumvent the power structure. And it's really fun to see them in action, like the good ones. There's some good videos out there. But watching them get pulled over and get out of tickets is really a treat. These cops are always pissed. They're like, oh, you must be one of those sovereign citizens. The moment they start pulling the, I was traveling instead of driving. And they have the whole commercial code, the uniform commercial code. They know how to use it to get out of stuff, and it's fun. But sometimes they get dropped on their foreheads and split wide open, and they end up in prison for a month before getting out under some technicality that they figured out. So it doesn't always go smoothly for these sovereign citizen guys. A lot of them get cracked upside the head or tased or some shit. So much of that online these days. I love all the First Amendment audits. I think that's fantastic. These people, and I'm surprised when I bring it up around, not as many people know about First Amendment audits as I figured would. So if you're one of those people, I'll explain what it is. There's people who go around and stress test the First Amendment, the freedom of press. Now, the freedom of press comes from the printing press back in the day, and you had the freedom to put out news that you saw on the printing press, and nobody could tell you can't use a printing press to put out your news. So, freedom of the press. And it turns out that anywhere in public, now, and that extends into the public lobbies of federal and state and local government buildings, any place. Post offices are a really popular place where they'll do this. They also go to DMVs, airports. They stay away from schools pretty wisely because of the kid factor. They don't want to end up there, but lots of places. And anything you can see from public, you can record. So they get out their video cameras and they'll get these really fancy rigs. And then they'll cover their faces, a lot of them, to create their own privacy because there's no expectation of privacy in public. That's why every business can have cameras pointed at you, recording you without your consent. As you're walking down the street, you're on camera hundreds of times a day. And that's because you have no expectation of privacy in public. Yeah, every one of us has the freedom of press. And people are becoming more educated about it, but by and large, people get really indignant. They get very bent out of shape about being recorded without their consent. And they're convinced that they need to sign a release for you to be able to use this footage. And it's just not true. There's no need to give consent. Now, you can't be up in a public bathroom or in a locker room videotaping, but you can sure as fuck be out on a sidewalk videotaping whatever you want. And it's just funny to watch people mess with them. Security guards come out and try to force them out of the area, or store owners. just regular people on the street. There's people who go and they'll videotape state-owned dispensaries and things. And those people get really pissed because they don't want it out in the public eye that they're at the weed shop at whatever time of day. So I can see how it could get you in some hot water potentially. These guys do a good job. Some of them are really respectful, and some of them just try to get a rise out of people, and then people will come right up and grab their stuff. Now, apparently, if you get right up in somebody's face in a threatening way, which happens to these First Amendment auditors constantly, that's considered assault. If they touch you in some way or grab your equipment, something connected to you, that's considered assault and battery. That seems to be, what I'm seeing on these First Amendment audit videos. A lot of the guys are saying that because they're constantly assaulted, so they're pretty up on the law. A lot of them carry pepper spray, and they'll just pepper spray these people. Sometimes it's even like old people. I feel bad for them. They get right up in these people's faces, and they think they're tough, and they're old, and they get pepper sprayed or they get throat checked. They just kind of give them a little jab to the throat and set them back a little bit. So there's a couple of fun ones. So shout out like Chucky Cholo Audits, one of my new favorites. Check him out. Long Island Audits, the GOAT, Sean Paul Reyes. He's really cool. Seems to be one of the more calm dudes out there. Doesn't start too much trouble, but trouble finds him and he finds it. Good saga there with a police detective from Connecticut, if you want to catch up on Long Island Audit. And then there's some other ones. The First Amendment Protection Agency with the People's Bicep. He's really good. And a couple other ones, Liberty Patrol. So check these people out. I think it's really entertaining, and it's fascinating to see people when they're willing to go out and stress test their rights. The reaction from the police and from the citizens around them is really fascinating. It's a really interesting look into human behavior. So it's worth your time, in my opinion. There's not a lot of Second Amendment audit guys that are going out with the AR-15. That doesn't usually go well for them. And I think we need to do that at a certain level. But the First Amendment audit thing brings these people enough trouble. But our rights are really important. It's the coolest part about being an American. I have a right at age 49 to wear Spizikes or whatever. These are Jordan Spizikes, which I just dusted off and put on. I haven't worn these in a while. Spike Lee from the 1980s, I guess, in the 90s. Remember, he used to be in those Air Jordan commercials where he was the little skinny guy. Very famous Hollywood director. Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, I think he did. He did some really good ones. He probably did Jungle Fever. I don't recall, with Wesley Snipes, but really talented guy. And apparently did well. He lives out there in Martha's Vineyard with all the rich white folks. Yeah, he took over the sneaker game. If you go in, like a lot of the Jordans are these Jordan 4 variants and similar that they call the Spizike, and they have a Spike Lee logo on the back. Coinciding with the Spizike takeover of Jordans, my partner's uncle is an artist, a really fantastic artist, and he lives on Martha's Vineyard. And he's really into like black leaders. He's a big advocate for African American heritage. He's an ally. He fights for black rights, and it's really important to him. So he does a lot of artwork depicting famous black leaders. And he puts it out on these roads in Martha's Vineyard, so he stands out like a sore thumb. And apparently Spike Lee would drive by his house and see all this artwork out front with like John Lewis and different people. And he stopped in thinking it was going to be an African-American artist. And here comes this 6'6" bald white guy. But they've hit it off, and they've got some sort of a relationship going where Spike Lee bought some art from him and commissioned some pieces. So that's pretty cool. Sometimes these coincidences in life are really fascinating, how the circles just connect. This is right after I bought these that Spike Lee shows up at his house to buy art. Cool connection. Anyway, good for him. It's nice to see him get his shine, get his flowers after all these years of a prolific artist. Now, I was born with artistic ability, which a lot of people that know me will know, but I'm not really a practicing artist. I don't do it. I don't draw and paint. And I'd like to. I think I'm going to get back into it someday. But for now, I do it once in a great while. I'm rusty, so it's hard to jump on and get it done. But I do enjoy it when I start. But somebody like her uncle really deserves to get some recognition because he's a prolific artist. The guy just constantly produces art. And that's what it's all about. Whatever your passion is, you got to put in your 10,000 hours to become a master, as they say. Maybe I'll just put 10,000 hours into podcasting and get halfway decent at this. That would be cool. I got to do something. Going to be 50. Got to work out some sort of talent. I can't dunk a basketball anymore, so that's out. I could probably draw something when I get older. I'll do some paintings. We'll see. I might become an art thief. You never know. A very famous art thief. You heard it here first, folks. Don't come after me if some art gets stolen around here. Anyway, I looked at the news a little bit. A couple of fascinating news items were in there. Looks like Trump and Kim Jong-un are going to have a summit talking about denuclearization, which if he's going to bomb the piss out of the Iranians, might as well send a couple over to Kim Jong's house. I mean, why the fuck is he making nukes? He doesn't need them. He's a scumbag. That country's horrible. I mean, the stories that come out of there from people who have escaped are unconscionable. They're horror stories about starvation and cruelty and desperation, abuse and rape. It's just a nightmare. But a lot of people don't know how North Korea makes a lot of its money for its GDP. And the numbers are a bit obscured because they're kind of like a weird country. They don't put out numbers like regular countries. They actually produce a lot of heroin and methamphetamines. It used to be mostly heroin. They had state-sponsored poppy production. And then it switched over to methamphetamines, and they account for a large portion of the drugs on the global market. Fascinating. Because I was like, how do they make money over there and even survive? And then their biggest export turns out that are wigs, like fake eyelashes and wigs with real hair that people in China sell. They'll cut off their hair. They send it over to North Korea. Cheap North Korean labor assembles these wigs and these eyelashes and stuff out of the hair. And then they send it back to China to be sold on the market. Crazy. And that makes up it's only like $300 million or something, which that's a lot of money. But for a country, for that to be their biggest export was kind of weird. So I would say their biggest export's probably crank or something like that. But yeah, if they're making wigs and they're all on meth, they're kind of like a bunch of messed up wiggers over there, aren't they? Wiggers with a W. Came up with that joke. It's not my best. What else though? So we'll see how that goes. Maybe he'll drop a couple of little bomberoos on Kim Jong-un. Give that guy a little tape. I don't know if I wrote anything else down. What else did I look up? Oh, just, I haven't been posting inflammatory political posts much at all lately. During the entire breakup and stuff, I don't think I did any of it. And that was kind of something I used to do a lot of, and it would piss people off. And I see why. I'm could be an asshole on Facebook about political things. Just my wording, But I did do another post today. This thing came up from COVID. And it was just upsetting. It was all these news anchors and all these leadership figures repeating stuff that turned out to not be true at all, such as that the vaccination will stop transmission and everybody that takes the vaccine stops it cold in its tracks. And then all those people ended up getting COVID multiple times. I want people to remember how COVID started, and they were showing videos. They were leaking videos out of China where they were welding people in their doors, and you'd hear the screams at night of the people suffering in their apartments that they'd been welded into. And there was footage of people dropping over dead, just collapsing in the street. And, that's what they sent. Like, this is what COVID does. And so people were good and scared by and large by the time COVID showed up in America, and they were ready to do whatever the damn government told them to do to avoid getting killed by this disease. Obviously, that went away pretty quick. Now, you can call it herd immunity, but I think the brainwashing stopped because it didn't work like it was supposed to. So suddenly nobody gives a shit about COVID. There's no COVID fear. There's no social distancing or masking of any note. And people have just kind of moved on from this fear that they were living in. But one of the weirder things about that was back in 2020 to 21 when we first had COVID, they had historically low influenza numbers. And there was like 1,670 something cases diagnosed by labs in the entire United States that year. Only 1,600 cases of the flu. Normally it's in the multi-millions, tens of millions that get it. And a good little chunk of those people die. About the same as died of COVID. If you really look at died with COVID versus died from COVID, like I've said before, like there was a lot of people who busted their damn skull open and died in the hospital, but got tested positive for COVID. So they were listed as a COVID-19 death. It was bullshit. But on top of that bullshit, they said that almost nobody got the flu that year. Well, isn't that interesting? Because 54 million people got COVID. So were they just calling influenza COVID? Like, how's that possible? You don't just not get the flu just because COVID shows up. So what they tried to say when you ask, the experts why that would be, they say, well, it was the masking effort, the social distancing greatly reduced the influenza exposure. Well, that's interesting because it did a hell of a job. That masking and social distancing basically stopped flu cold. Now, I don't know if the flu is a bigger virus that got caught in the fabric of those masks that can't catch viruses. But to give that as a reason that nobody caught the flu, while 54 million people were diagnosed with COVID-19, it just doesn't add up. They were clearly, so I don't even know if COVID-19 is a real thing at this point. It may have always been the flu. I mean, this thing was such a psyop, such a mind fuck from start to finish. So why believe any of it? You can't trust any of it. Even the Lancet had things that turned out to be false articles they were putting in there. It was a worldwide effort because people have to remember, they were like, well, you can't get all these people it can't be a conspiracy that big, especially across the whole globe. How would you get everybody to do it? And they wouldn't leak. Well, it's very simple. Anytime you want to have a ironclad conspiracy, you don't control very many people. All you need is the people at the very top. Nothing goes past the people at the very top. If you try to go over the head of the people at the very top, they'll fucking chop your head off and they'll discredit you. They'll throw you in prison. Whatever they've got to do to shut you up, they'll do. But it really comes down to from the top down. So if you're the head of the CDC and you're the head of the World Health Organization, well, you've got pretty much enough power to influence what every other medical institution in the world is going to say. And that's what they did. This was all a pandemic. It really was. Event 201. It was all planned out. Going back and seeing the footage of the brainwashing is outrageous. Just the lying. A pandemic of the unvaccinated. They tried to dehumanize people who didn't get the vaccine. I didn't get the vaccine. I saw that it was a scam right away because luckily I was a conspiracy theorist. So when I saw a clear conspiracy, it wasn't hard for me to say, hell no, I'm not taking that shot. But I was seeing people in my friends list, cheering each other on like, hey, I got an appointment to get the vaccine. They're like, oh, which one? Johnson & Johnson's the only one they had in my town. I'm getting the Pfizer. Oh, yay. They were so excited, patting each other on the fannies. Meanwhile, I'm sitting back in horror like, Jesus Christ, these people are so convinced, so brainwashed by this entire fear-mongering state that my words will never penetrate that. I mean, there's nothing that anybody's going to say because they trusted the experts, and the experts were wrong about a lot of it. And we know that now. And the new list of side effects came out and includes myocarditis and seizures and all of these other ailments that can happen in children and different people. So a lot of people are linking turbo cancers to this shit. I'm seeing that. I know people in my life that all of a sudden get cancer. It just rapidly takes them away. There's all kinds of problems. There's so many vaccine injured people. The VAERS program, the vaccine injury databases, they estimate accounts for 1% of actual vaccine injuries. Like it's such a small reporting, but it's enough to get a picture, a snapshot of that there's a lot of vaccine injuries from COVID-19. Now, that said, I'm not against mRNA technology. I think eventually mRNA technology linked with a functioning AI system will be amazing. If they can take over someday, right now we have a brilliant immune system that God gave us, but you can still get killed. If they someday figure out how to actually make a better immune system using mRNA and AI, because we are going to become more and more integrated with technology into our physiology, the implantable tech. When that eventually happens, I mean, yeah, your body will be able to pick up any cancer, any disease that hits you. It'll have like a personalized to your DNA code or your RNA, whatever, a way to fix it. So really promising. We're going to have to break a few eggs to make that omelet, clearly. And they really tried to push it with COVID-19. Didn't go well. A lot of people woke up from that. So if they hit us again, it's going to have to be a deadly pandemic to sell it again, which is a shame. I hope they don't, but they tease about it. They act like they're going to do it again someday. But we'll see. We'll see. You never know. What else happened? Some Americans were killed in a Kenyan safari helicopter crash. That's kind of creepy. You go over to Kenya to get on a helicopter for a safari. 1 minute you're watching zebras run from a lion. The next minute you're screaming as your face melts. Horrible. Terrible thing. U.S. national debt topped 40 trillion. Yeah, who cares? It's all funny money. How many trips back and forth to the moon, end to end with dollar bills is that? 40 trillion. It's got to be quite a few. The world's going to hell in a handbasket, but here in upstate New York, it's calm and peaceful, relatively low crime. The world is still, despite the fact that we're hurtling through space on this little rock, this oblate spheroid, with a star shining on us and animating the soil into us so that we can build AI technology and mRNA and, become interstellar travelers or interdimensional travelers. It's an interesting world that we live in, and it's kind of amazing if you think about it. Everything's pretty chill considering we're ripping through space at some ungodly miles per hour, the entire solar system, and it's ripping through the galaxy. And we're part of something much, much bigger. So don't let the little things get you down. Yeah, it's good to be aware. It's good to talk these things out, but, keep a good attitude, because there has to be a God to keep things this chill as we rip through space. Shouldn't there be like meteors taking us out constantly? There's barely a ripple. So thank God for that. I'm out of breath. I've been inhaling incense smoke in this little tiny house for about the last 25 minutes or however long this is going on. So I guess I'll close it out there. Thanks for tuning in to episode 21 of the Sigma Wolph Podcast. I'm your out of breath host, Brian Dates, and I will see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye.